Hey, it's Dylan, and today's a really exciting day because I get to bring you the review and the highlights from the Q1 2026 Archer Aviation's earnings call. And just so everybody knows, I do take a little bit more time to go back and research these calls, so I don't just read through the transcripts. I actually go back and listen to the earnings call probably 5 to 10 times because I really do like to hear the tone of voice that everybody in the C-suite and hear what the words that they're saying. So let's get into our review and highlights for Q1 2026 from Archer Aviation.
Archer Aviation Q1 2026 Review and Highlights. Witness the next generation of sustainable flight.
To me, this was a really solid Q1 call for Archer, and not just hearing a really good prepared statement that Adam had presented, you also got to hear from Priya, the CFO, and then when we got to the Q&As where we got some really good questions actually asked by the analyst on this call, we did also get to hear from Benjamin Lyon and then Tom as well on the defense side. So also learning about Archer really leaning into the first principles approach of building, and that would be them building their aircraft basically on a clean sheet. So you have your commercial Midnight, and that basically would be a clean sheet design built for passenger civil cargo use cases. And then you have the defense Midnight, where to me this was the most we've heard about the defense project on any call, and I'll get into more of that later too. But it was really exciting to hear that vehicle, which they were actually calling it not just an aircraft, was also a clean sheet build. So again, Archer's strategy is not to hybridize their aircraft they have for commercial use, but they're really building from the ground up to supply Andrew with the best aircraft and a possible loyal wingman that could be for not just U.S. government contracts, but U.S. ally government contracts as well, which Archer and Andrew has been down selected for Project Next over in the UK as well. So more to come. And even on this call, we got some really good questions in the Q&A. So we'll go over some of the questions and some of the answers that Tom, Adam, Benjamin had. But one of the questions that was brought up on the Q&A did speak about any bottlenecks that Archer Aviation did see coming down. And this question was actually asked to Joby Aviation as well. So let's see how Archer Aviation was actually able to answer this Q&A. And before we go to their answer in the Q&A, Adam actually spoke a little bit on this during the prepared remarks. So much like Adam, sometimes he's ahead of the game when it comes to what's going on with his company and what the investor base does want to know as well. So Adam was really talking about that he needs to solve two additional challenges. One is going to be the key to unlock industrial scale. So this is going to be the delivery cost and the performance improvement. And then the second key is going to be unlocking the national airspace. So right now, Adam does feel confident that there is enough room in the airspace for the amount of eVTOL aircraft that could be in the skies in the next 3 to 5 years. But to truly make this UAM vision really a dream come true, there is going to be some improvement that's going to have to be done to the NAS, or the national airspace. So we do know that there is an additional $20 billion that's being proposed for the funding, which I would think would be to include the software. And Adam even said on the call, if it was not Palantir who was to win the software integration, that there are a lot of application aspects that Archer can bring to the table that he feels will bring a lot of value and could actually bring significant revenue towards the balance sheet as well. So as Adam goes for building out the hybridized Midnight defense project, he's also going to go ahead and cut back on CapEx spend on that defense project if it is not going to be selected for a program and awarded that program of record. So it's interesting to see how Adam's already forward looking into building out the defense product, which we'll hear that Tom was really excited to talk about as well. And again, I think this is the most that we've ever heard about their defense project on a call. Because usually in the past, it's been, we can't say much about this now, we're expecting a contract to be awarded. But this time, and especially when we get to the Q&A, Tom really has some cool things to say about that defense Midnight aircraft. So it was great to hear Adam talk on the prepared remarks about the execution from the team this quarter as well. And he was able to say how Archer was the first eVTOL company to complete and close phase 3 of the FAA's 4-phase type certification process. and he's basically saying that he's been advancing through phase 4 in parallel. This has also been one of the most expansive flight test program quarters for Archer, where they've been doing CTOL and VTOL tests in parallel. And with that, they've also been doing multiple flights a day. So all of the tracking that we've been doing on our flight awares and our ADS-B signals, it looks like that a lot of those have been true, and it's exciting to see that Archer is both testing their CTOL and VTOL versions of their flight. Also this quarter, Archer was able to take control and operations at Hawthorne Airport. So this is where they're really building out the next generation innovation hub, and they're developing it also with their partners, because you cannot retrofit your way into the right solution, as Adam said. You have to take the first principles approach. When it comes to Archer and their acquisitions, I really do like to give them about 2 quarterly earnings calls before they start to reveal the what's and the whys behind those acquisitions. Now, we do know that these often come with a dilutive event that would have already taken place to the shareholders, but I do think it's important for Archer then to start coming back to the investors and let them know really what they were doing with the shareholder money and the acquisitions that were being made. So when it comes to the Carum as well as the Overair acquisition, they really paired into what Adam was talking about with his relationship with Anduril and how the work really continues to accelerate. And this is based on not building a hybridized commercial Midnight. It's starting with a clean sheet and building an aircraft really for the specs that Anduril is looking for. And we did hear on the Q&A that some more questions were asked about the defense, where Tom was able to answer. And he really did seem very excited about what he had to say about this project that they're working on with Anduril, and do hope to reveal this in the second half of the year. So more on that to come once we get to the Q&As. And here's a quick quote I want to read you from what they were speaking about regarding the Anduril autonomous vehicle that they're creating. Adam said, "I believe our hybrid dual-use autonomous aircraft will be the most sophisticated vertical lift platform ever developed in its category. When people see what we have built, they will recalibrate their beliefs about what America can field, and I cannot wait to show it off." So now Archer is a multi-threat company, and they expect to start initial air taxi operations in U.S. cities, begin winning phased government awards, and then also bringing in their AI solutions later this year. So even more on that to come later. The Q&A, we still get to learn more. And not to forget those that like to learn about the CapEx spend, because I'm definitely one of those that likes to know where the money's going and where they got the cash spend basically routed towards. So Priya was speaking that we should be expecting an adjusted EBITDA loss around $170 to $200 million. But really that upspend is going towards both the software and the Defense Midnight project. So it has been said that you may see an elevated cash spend in the next 2 quarters. But Adam also said that if these programs were not one that were going to be lucrative to Archer, that he's not against cutting these programs and basically backing that cash spend back down, probably to the $110 to $140 million range that they were typically sitting at about 2-3 quarters ago. So quick breakdown on the finances. The CapEx is in line with their guidance, and it will show a higher CapEx spend going in through basically the summer, but with a lot to be seen on the second half of the year. Maybe that CapEx spend is what we've been waiting on. So you had Andres from Canaccord actually ask the question basically around defense and autonomy being a big focus moving forward. And this is where we had Tom step in, and he said, leading the defense program, they've done work with the Air Force over the years, and there might be some niche applications here, but for the significant opportunities, ones with the largest need, we are targeting now. You can't expect to modify Midnight and have it function well for these different missions. It just doesn't make sense. So developing a clean sheet new aircraft, which is hybrid vehicle, the aircraft is optimized for a different mission. So the dual-use mission we are looking now has a very specific payload, speed, range, and cost targets that are quite different from Midnight. So now that we are pretty far into the development of that vehicle, he says he thinks it's going to be a pretty incredible aircraft, and he can't wait to show that off. And as these large opportunities are coming up later this year in defense, our goal is to show that off, meaning Archer's goal is to show that off later this year and ultimately win some of those phase down selections. So again, Tom is super excited and was really happy to answer that question during the Q&A. We did get a follow-up question from Andres, and he was talking about VTOL flights. And this is where we got Benjamin called in, and let's see what he had to say about VTOL flights for Archer in 2026. So Benjamin was saying that Archer is already very much in the midst of their piloted VTOL campaign. So they're rapidly expanding the cadence, flying multiple aircraft multiple times a day. And really the focus right now is on progressing through more complex test points and being ahead of full transition. So central is the software verification and validation. And Archer actually moved through the hover regime, which is the first phase, faster than any prior phase. That is basically the fastest they've ever progressed from a first flight through this point in a test campaign. So this has also come with the fewest issues. And as Benjamin says, we're not far away, but it will be in the second half of the year for transition. And their goal is to complete piloted transition and be ready to enter eIPP operations later this year. So now let's see what Edison from Deutsche Bank wanted to know from Archer Aviation. Well, he was curious actually in the ecosystem that revolved around the new ATC. So when Adam was speaking on this, he said that working on a broader AI product would specifically be around the ATC solutions, and they've been doing that for several years now. So whether Palantir wins or not, he does believe that Archer will have a role in the modernization efforts for the ATC, as they have already built a lot of tools that he thinks can add a lot of value. And these are ones where he hasn't even shown the solution publicly, as it's a very competitive space, as he says. But they do intend to show it pretty soon. So that is exciting to start seeing what Archer Aviation has to show us outside of just the Midnight aircraft. And then going to Edison's second question, he was talking about basically the commercial side and the scaling, and what do you think would be the biggest bottlenecks? So we know that this question was also asked on Joby Aviation's earnings call, and they basically listed out bottlenecks being supply chain readiness, having the FAA pilots in their sim. So let's see what Archer had to say. So Adam did lean in and say that basically the work is getting through the aircraft and getting the aircraft through the certification process, and that they are now through the third phase of the certification. So completing that really allowed them to unlock the TIA process. And he was speaking to when means of compliance is not finished, it often means that you have existing issue papers and things that you're unwilling to agree to. So just to remind that the way that Archer has gone about working with the FAA and building the Midnight, they have really leaned into what the FAA has wanted and not looked to be a bottleneck for the FAA in basically being able to certify and approve these eVTOLs. So Archer's one that really leans into the FAA and wants to keep their ear open and hear what the FAA wants from these eVTOL aircraft, so that Archer can design theirs specifically around FAA approval statuses as well. And I think something that we've been speaking about for a while now, where I've mentioned, is been that the production and really the ramp of production of these aircraft, I wouldn't expect to take place until really we get further through the TIA type certification and know that is going to be a conforming aircraft that will be approved by the FAA. But Adam's very confident as they continue to push forward for their goal of about 50 aircraft per year. So let's see through the rest of this year if the guidance for 2027 is going to be 50 aircraft during the year, maybe more, maybe less, and let's hope for more. One thing I heard mentioned on this call that was brought up not only on other eVTOL calls, but we actually heard some of this on Archer Aviation's Q4 call, I believe it was. So it leaned into what really is the infrastructure build out that is needed. And Adam did speak about, yes, the infrastructure build out is going to be important through public and private partnerships, especially speaking of the Florida region, which has just been granted the access to have some vertiport build outs as well. And Adam talking about how they're really looking to do their route from Miami to Palm Beach, and that could be a great setup for their entrance into the eIPP. So as again they talk about infrastructure, Adam did lean into Beta and their charging stations being one that could help bring this industry together. And again, this is not the first time, and I think it's consecutive calls now where Adam has brought up the industry coming together, and then also used Beta Technologies as one of the key players that's going to help this industry come together as one. Now, I do like Austin from Canaccord. I do think he usually comes with really good questions to these calls, but on this question, I feel like he kind of repeated one that Savi had asked last quarter. And this was regarding the restricted type certificate in which Archer has been going after for the UAE, and really just trying to get an understanding of why they would be going for that certificate. And Adam has mentioned on past calls that this is a more globally recognized certificate and can actually drive Midnight to earlier commercial use than going after any other type of certificate programs like the type qualification that was previously worked on. So the restricted type certification program, again, more internationally recognized and would allow the launch edition to accelerate as again, they work with Abu Dhabi Aviation to go ahead and fulfill those flights. So it does allow Archer to generate early revenue, but also to generate early real-world flight experience as well. So on this call, of course, we got a question about the ATC system, and they were really curious to know if Archer was going to be a hardware provider, a software provider. Was the eVTOL going to be a vector to really test the skies, and how was Archer going to play into this build out? And what caught me a little surprised, but it was a little reassuring, was to hear Adam say that even if Palantir was not selected and awarded to basically modernize the skies under the ATC system and be the software integrator, that Archer was really there to help in any way they can. And even if that means not generating significant amounts of revenue, really allowing the flywheel to expand to more eVTOLs in the skies. So on this call, you did hear multiple times Adam talking about the flywheel, the first principles approach to build, and having a clean sheet aircraft. So you do have Archer, who will be doing the applications layer, and then you have Palantir, who will be focused more on the integration layer when it comes to that ATC system. And then we had Savi. Now, personally, this is one of my favorite analysts on the calls. I feel like she's asked great questions for going on over 2 years now. So initially, she just wanted to know, as you're building out and you have 2 aircraft and you plan to have 8 to 10 more coming this year, basically, how do you look to split those up? So Adam said that he has 2 flying today, and they're still working on 8 to 10 aircraft, and those will be allotted across the test programs, the eIPP, the launch edition customers, and basically putting in place the infrastructure to go ahead and ramp up that production to 50 aircraft per year. Now, when we get into Savi's second question, I think this was a really interesting one about the U.S. and the defense programs. So Adam started saying that new opportunities that global governments are becoming aware of has become very clear that there's an aircraft that we can build that can meet the demands and leverage a lot of the tools and systems in the supply chain that we have already put into place for the core Midnight aircraft. So even though it's a new type of aircraft, that being said, they've taken the Andro approach, where they are building ahead of these programs being announced. So by the time that the programs get announced, they'll already be in position to win them. And by going down that path, their building has, what Archer has said is basically, by going down that path, what they're building has turned out to be a pretty incredible aircraft, and they've also called it a vehicle. And then that's why they have a lot of confidence that this product will become very interesting around the world, and then have an increased level of conviction in this aircraft that they're building is going to have a global demand and become very interesting as well. So let's keep looking out for that Project Nyx, U.S. deals and U.S. ally government contract deals to come. This was a quick Q&A right here from Amit from H.C. Wainwright, but I think he asked a great question that really nobody has been asking, and that's on the certification of the actual facilities in which they're going to build out. So Adam says, yes, they are working on certification, and they're working through that through the production certificate, and they're trying to basically time that right along with that type certification process as well. So really good to see that not only the certification process is going on with the FAA and the aircraft, but also in the facilities that we're going to look to ramp the manufacturing and the production of these aircraft as well. And then came Chris from Needham, and this was such an interesting question because he was basically saying, in the next 3 to 5 years, should we be looking at Archer as more of a defense company? So on this one, big shout out to the Goat Gains. Go follow him on X and YouTube. He's got great eVTOL content and does his eVTOL Talk Tuesdays. So looking forward to a new episode. So big shout out to the Goat, and let's get back to seeing what Adam had for Chris's question on Archer becoming a defense company in the next 3 to 5 years. So this answer was really interesting to me, because in my head I always thought that being a program of record being awarded would be a large sum of money onto the balance sheet, and you would really maybe want to have these eVTOL companies being a winner in the defense sector. Adam actually responded to this, saying that the civil opportunities would be larger than the defense opportunities. So as we've said, Archer is doing everything from a clean sheet build to be ready to win those programs of records on the defense side. But what Adam sees is if he can deploy 10 to 12 midnights in the thousandth largest cities across the world, that can be hundreds of billions of dollars of sale of aircraft. So again, take 5 to 10 aircraft, multiply that by 1,000 cities, and now you start to see a real TAM that's starting to grow in this eVTOL sector, and for Archer Aviation too. One of the last questions we got on the Q&A from the analysts was regarding Archer's involvement in the eIPP and whether they'd be doing CTOL or VTOL flights, and basically how they would be operating under the eIPP. So we already know that there's more to come for the second half of the year on Archer's VTOL transition test flight campaign, but Adam basically answered this with the cities are still planning out the routes in which they're looking to have the eVTOLs fly in. So once the cities get back with the specific routes, and I think that will also tie into some of the charging infrastructure that we've already been talking about, we're going to start hearing more about the specific operations that Archer Aviation will be doing under the eIPP program. Last but not least, let's say the retail question, and that was saved for last. So the retail question was basically saying, I'm a normal human being who does not live in New York City. I don't have a house in the Hamptons. How is a midnight aircraft going to be a benefit for me? So Adam said that this product was not designed for the rich. It was designed for the masses. He says that even for himself, being in Florida, being able to take that 1 hour trip over the water at 150 miles per hour would have allowed him to bypass an easy 45 minutes of Tampa traffic, even for him growing up. So again, he wants everyone to see that hopefully they can see that this product is made for everyone and not just for a select few. So big shout out to Adam for taking that retail question, and who knows, moving forward, hopefully maybe we'll get a retail question over to him. And if you have any good ones as they start coming into Q2, drop them in the comments here or in one of the new videos. So if you've had any thoughts on this video, if you have any reactions to Archer's Q1 2026 earnings call, drop them in the comments. If you have anything that you liked, any highlights, anything that you reviewed, anything that I picked up on, or anything that I missed, drop them in the comments. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe, and I will see you again.